Welcome to Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. Your Day Weather podcast brought to you by ConverseCountyTourism.com. Feel the energy of Converse County. Explore Douglas's railroad heritage, Ayers Natural Bridge, and the Jackalope legend. Glen Rockbo scenic trails, dinosaur history, and small town charm. Plan your visit at ConverseCountyTourism.com. Well, for those of you along east of the divide, it's still going to be cool and a bit unsettled again today, as the upper low that slowly came through over the weekend is still in the upper Midwest. And the counterclockwise rotation going to wrap some shower activity and some thunderstorm activity along and east of the divide today and keep temperatures a little cool. So going to be kind of soupy for some of you today east of the divide. For the whole region, the occasional shower or thunderstorm chance is going to be with us through Saturday. There's going to be an uptick, we'll talk about this in a minute, in thunderstorms on Sunday. So through Saturday, it's kind of your garden variety shower or thunderstorm like we talked about yesterday. Then we have this possible larger low coming into the western United States early next week. We're going to keep an eye on it. It's likely going to be a weather maker in a lot of different facets. Also, have some questions about, are we going to have a good thunderstorm season? Basically, it's the North American monsoon for parts of the western and especially the southern Rockies and southwestern United States. You can get some hints and some clues whether or not it may be a good, average, or poor monsoon season. We'll kind of take a look at maybe what the outlook is for this summer there. A lot of gray clouds yesterday afternoon and evening and more showers rolling off the Bighorn Mountains of northern Wyoming, as you can see there. And a nice shot there from the Pine Ridge area near Crawford, Nebraska. Greening up of those meadows is finally some significant rain, and I mean really badly needed rain across the western parts of Nebraska, parts of western South Dakota, and east central Wyoming here over the last week or so. So good to see that moisture. And down in Texas, Lake Bridgeport is full for the first time in 4 or 5 years, according to Scott. So good to see the moisture returning for many areas. When we take a look at the clouds from yesterday, some good mammatus clouds all across the region from the Laramie Valley to around the Cheyenne area. The Laramie Valley, one shower and thunderstorm after another yesterday, and northwest winds aloft, which is a preferred flow of air. When you have that this time of year, especially in the Laramie Valley, the wind direction works with the terrain really well to produce showers and thunderstorms. A great shot there from Jan of the mammatus kind of getting a little turbulent there in the base of the showers and thunderstorms that developed yesterday afternoon. There's a beautiful shot above Pinedale of the Wind River Range from yesterday. Now, the satellite image this morning, I'm going to loop it so you can kind of see what's going on. We've got this upper level low down here in Texas, and we have this other area of upper level low pressure circulating, and you can see the counterclockwise rotation. And this little patch of cloudiness right here is a pocket of instability and moisture that's heading southeast. So from southern Montana through the eastern slopes of the Rockies of Wyoming into Nebraska and far northern Colorado, this system is going to bring some unsettled weather today. While it's heating up in the deserts and along the west coast with that big high pressure ridge. And we'll talk about that heat here in a moment. When we take a look at the 500 millibar chart, you can see it very well, the structure that you just saw on the satellite image. So precipitation between the next 24 hours, basically from this morning through tomorrow, looks like this. So there's going to be an area of, a lot of this is just going to be rain showers. There will be some thunder, but a lot of rain shower, some scattered thunderstorm activity along that boundary we just showed you on the satellite photos. That'll be coming in and making today unsettled. So this precipitation is going to fall in these areas today. Temperatures are going to be very cool. You can see that huge contrast between the plains and the deserts from west to east, a big, big temperature contrast. And that's really, for the most part, going to continue into tomorrow. Then as we get on into Friday, we start to warm up east of the divide. That warmer air kind of rotates around and gets on the other side of the divide. Then we're going to see a big warm up, going to get pretty darn hot in this part of the world right here as we get into the weekend, and that heat will spread east. So there's going to be kind of a burst of summer this weekend into early next week across a lot of the west, and you can see all the way up here into the northern plains, with the cool air still kind of bottled up across the southern plains. So you can see those temperature anomalies on Saturday. Look at the heat in Oregon and up into Boise, into California here. Some real early summer-like heat around that high pressure ridge, and it expands on Sunday. Now, one reason the heat is so impressive is because there's a low off the west coast pumping in a strong southwest flow into the region. And you'll see in a minute, this will get erased rather quickly as we head into early next week because of this. We're going to have a strong upper low come in off the Pacific and settle into the Great Basin states. It's going to start producing more in the way of shower and thunderstorm in the west. And so as we get into Monday and Tuesday, the areas like the Pacific Northwest and the Great Basin that's going to be so hot will cool off rather rapidly. And there's going to be a good amount of shower and thunderstorm activity as that upper low comes through. You see this little tail right here? This is a piece of the storm that wants to come up as we get into Monday and Tuesday. I will tell you this type of pattern in early June is a severe weather maker. And you can see this at least, now this is pretty far out, but this is the prediction Monday afternoon for thunderstorm activity where that little wave, that little tail I just showed you right here is coming through. Seen this a lot of times before. So expect a lot of storm chasers to potentially be in eastern Wyoming, eastern Colorado, western Nebraska, down here into Kansas, the Panhandle areas. That's a severe weather maker in early June. So something that we'll need to watch for early next week for especially front range and adjacent plains areas. When you look at the temperature anomaly on Tuesday, quite a difference. Look at the cool air that's coming in. So a little bit of a temperature whiplash for those of you on the western slope in terms of what temperatures are going to do over a 5 to 7 day period. So now what I want to talk about is what we call the North American monsoon. We should not confuse the word monsoon here with the kind of monsoons they get in India and parts of Asia. It's not the same thing, but the mechanism that drives it is somewhat similar. So I'm not going to read all these bullet points. You can come back and watch this later if you want to go through there. But essentially, simply put, when you start to heat up the deserts of Mexico, the deserts of California, Arizona, New Mexico, the Great Basin deserts, and you have this very large area that just starts to get hot in May and June and into early July, that heat causes a natural area of low pressure. And high pressure air moves to low pressure air. Basically, there's always a movement of high pressure to low pressure, and that's important because the land mass becomes much warmer than the water surrounding it. So low pressure on the land surrounded by high pressure means the air that's over the water, since it's cooler, is naturally more high pressure. So the air that forms and is over the water, that gets warmed by the water, gets pushed inland. So this pressure gradient begins to develop, and that helps draw higher humidity air from the oceans into the continent. It starts mainly mid to late June. It can vary in timing all the way through here. But if you want to kind of have an idealized flow of what happens, you get this low pressure in the desert area right here, and then you see these green arrows of where the natural wind flow is. And this natural wind flow from the Gulf here and the Gulf of California here work together to bring this moisture up. You also, during the establishment of summer, tend to have a semi-permanent high pressure ridge and an area of counterclockwise flow here, then the counterclockwise flow with the desert low, the desert heat low that forms. So that generally is what happens. Now, this is a very idealized graphic that the Weather Service in Boulder put together. This is idealized, okay? So this isn't a graphic that's a prediction. But what it shows is the subtropical high here, the heat low here work in unison, and then you just draw the moisture in from your water sources and you bring it northward. The trick for this part of the world right here is whether or not the jet stream will cut the top of the monsoon off, which happens when you're in a La Nina summer, like last summer, or if the jet stream wants to go more north and it doesn't cut the head off the monsoon. What happens down here, you're going to get the monsoon no matter what. It's just a matter of how strong it's going to be and how persistent it's going to be. So this is the setup that begins in June, matures in July into early August, then it begins to fade away as the temperature begins to change as you get to the latter half of summer and you don't build up the heat as much in the deserts. So this is the idealized flow. Now there's been some studies out there and some papers, and there's a really strong correlation with the sea surface temperature anomalies in the Gulf of California, especially. That's that narrow strip between Mexico and the Baja. Once it gets to 79 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 degrees Celsius, it seems to be when the monsoon wants to start to develop. That's when the thunderstorms become more numerous in the Mexico deserts. And then those Mexico desert thunderstorms then start to work their way further north, further and further north, and then eventually get into the central and northern Rockies if the pattern is right. So what we do is we watch for the trigger of when it gets to 79 degrees. Papers also suggest that when you get it really warm, that's when you get a very, very strong monsoon. So like many things we talk about in this podcast, we talk about it's the oceans really driving a lot of our weather. And here's another example of that. So the sea surface temperature anomaly is what we want to watch very carefully. Now, the most recent sea surface temperature anomaly shows it really warming up. Down here, the Gulf is very warm as well. Okay? The paper suggests that for the southwestern United States and part of the Rockies, it looks really narrow, and you're thinking, well, that isn't enough water to make a difference. Well, it is. But when you have it coming from both sides and then coming north, when you have these anomalies that are warm, that really helps. Notice the northwest part of the Gulf of California is colder than average. So how does that translate in the temperature? Well, this is really neat. Our satellites now have the ability to detect sea surface temperature. So you can really see very well the contrast between the colder waters up here off the coast of California. And you see the feeding of the warmer water into the Gulf of California here. So if you look at the scale, when we look at the yellow colors, we're reaching that 26 degrees Celsius or 79 degree Fahrenheit threshold right here. But we are right around 22, 23 degrees, 24 degrees Celsius up here. So the monsoon for Arizona, northwest Mexico, we're not there yet. It's still May, okay? But it does look like this trend up here may work its way northward. Now we have these cooler water temperatures here, and we'll need to keep an eye on that. But we are certainly starting to see it warm up where we want it to. And you can see the warmer sea surface temperatures further east. Now, some of the predictive tools are actually forecasting a robust monsoon season this year. And there's a couple of things that you want to look for. Number one, you want to see those sea surface temperature anomalies. I will tell you this, one year, not long ago, if you remember the big cold, snowy winter, cold winter of 22 and the 23, it was so cool in Arizona and Southern California and so wet, that really stymied the next season's monsoon. A cold winter in the desert Southwest and Mexico will keep those sea surface temperature anomalies cold into the spring. So you had a wet winter, but you had a poor monsoon season. That's because of those sea surface temperature anomalies. If you are going away from a La Nina pattern, when the La Nina means colder sea surface temperatures out in the Pacific, and La Nina is in place, that tends to weaken the monsoon chances. This year, with the La Nina going to a neutral phase, that should mean a more northerly extent of the monsoon season and a better monsoon season for Arizona and New Mexico and the Four Corners area. The Canadian model in particular is really forecasting a very robust monsoon. So for the month of June, this is the precipitation anomaly that it's forecasting. So look at all the blue here in Mexico. And then that's working its way up. And so you can kind of see the shape of the moisture. Well, the shape of that moisture is like that because what the model is seeing is the monsoon getting going in the month of June and into the month of July. So you can see there, that's the signature of the monsoon. And the Canadian model has been predicting this for about 6 months. So you like to see consistency. The other models aren't as moist, but they're hinting at it. So when we look at the La Nina going into and staying neutral, basically staying right around this zero line here through the summer and not getting too negative or too positive. Well, the monsoon forecast, two things. One, it looks like it's going to be better than a year ago. Number two, with the La Nina not in place, it should get further north than last year. That's what the big picture item suggests for the monsoon season. And I know folks in the southwestern United States, Arizona, New Mexico, the Four Corners area, and sometime these monsoon rains get into the deserts of California, they need it. So hopefully this comes to fruition for them, and it's be something that we'll monitor as we go into the weeks and months ahead. Have yourself a great Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow.